think I have to peek around this because I'm only 5'2". Good morning, everyone. I'm Donnie Montague. I'm the chair of the Stewardship Committee. And, servant leadership here. You're going to give me something to stand on. I want to thank you all for being here. What a day to start this campaign, right? Considering what we just did. So I'm so pleased that today can be a celebratory day. And I don't know what's going to happen when other people get up there.
Don't let Donnie Montague be on a soapbox up here, my gosh.
All right, so there's another step that you didn't expect, Tom and Pat, when you come back up. First of all, I just want to thank each and every one of you for everything that you do for PCC, for your financial gifts, for your time and your commitment. We are so grateful for you and for everything you do. We will be going through a slide deck this morning, and you should have received a handout of the deck. For those of you who are watching online, the deck is also available online for you to download. Just quickly want to go over the agenda. Pat is going to give us an update on the latest progress around key church initiatives. And then Tom Perry, trustee and member of the Finance Committee, is going to take us through church financials and also provide us with some historical data. I'm going to show you some giving trends and also talk about ways to give. And then we're going to see Steve Shipstead again on video for a few minutes. And at the end, we'll have the opportunity for you to ask questions. Steve will be taking us through information about this year's stewardship campaign. So let's get started. I'd like to ask Pat Leisher to come back up. So remember, there's an extra step up there, Pat.
Oh, this is better. She's back, wearing a different hat. There is lots going on here at PCC, and that's why I called this slide Under Construction. First, the Mission Study Team report is complete and has been posted to the website. I encourage you to read it. We have already relied on the section entitled What We Seek to determine that Steve Shipstead has those qualities and qualifications. Now we turn to strengths and opportunities. The opportunities identified by the MST are: reimagine and revitalize child, youth, and family ministries. Approach the Lord's work with intention and operational effectiveness. Respect our past, but innovate for the future. Build fellowship and community. Rethink what mission could mean going forward, and create more opportunities for spiritual growth. The Board of Trustees will set priorities and design a plan for addressing these areas. We can't do everything at once. We are likely to use task forces to determine next steps with plenty of congregational input. What you think is important. Next, zero-based budgeting is underway for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins July 1st. Treasurer Kathy Kelleher and Financial Manager Tony Fisher are developing the framework for the staff and teams to use. One example of something that will be changing is how reimbursable expenses will be handled for the ministers. Most of their letters of call currently include a set amount for professional expenses. We are going to pull that line item out of the letters of call because it's not actually compensation. Each minister will submit a requested amount annually for things like travel, hospitality, conference, and study materials. This amount will go through the regular budget process and will likely vary from year to year. Finally, goal setting. Steve has been working with Rich Thompson and Adam Thatcher, both of whom are on the Personnel Committee, on his personal goals, which will parallel the church's goals for the most part. These are about ready to be submitted to the Board of Trustees, and when approved will be shared with you and provided to the staff to confirm their individual goals. I hope you can see that it is not business as usual at PCC, but a new chapter in which the church will be happier, healthier, more functional, and more effective than it has been. Thank you. Tom?
I've always wanted to be this tall. So the Board of Trustees and the Finance Committee thought it was really important to give you a brief overview of our financials before we turn to talk about stewardship. So here we have 5 fiscal years of our financials. The blue bars represent revenue and green represent expense. Now, on the top, we have the net figure, revenue less expense, for each of those periods. Now, at first glance, you might think, well, that doesn't look so bad, except for the period of 2019 to 20 when COVID hit so hard. But let's look at a different view of our finances. So what I've done here is outlined in red transfers of capital from our endowment account excuse me, and our special projects account. And what you see, if you look, for example, at 2017-18, is we transferred about $80,000 from our capital account into our revenue. Well, what that really means is operationally, we were $80,000 in the red in that year. So the analogy is, imagine running your households where you can't pay your bills every month and you keep dipping into your savings to make up the difference. It's not a good strategy long term to not live within our means. And I think our approach to zero-based budgeting and specific goals and objectives will bring these things together in a way that they haven't for a long, long time. So I think we need to be very careful when we look at financial information to really understand what's going on. And the Board of Trustees and the Finance Committee is absolutely committed to communicate information to you so that you understand where we are, where the money is coming from, and where the money is going. That's why zero-based budgeting is so important as we go forward. Now let me take a minute to look at the revenue streams by source. And you can see here that contributions from the congregation are the large share of where the revenue comes from, ranging from between high 50s to high 60s by way of percentage. Mexico Mission represents also a source of revenue. So do facilities and grants. So we want to make sure that on an ongoing basis you understand this picture so you know, in fact, where our revenues are coming from. Now let's look at the expense side, because that is a big consideration as we move forward. On the expense side, as you can see, compensation and benefits together represent a majority of expenses. And Bill Molman and I ran a not-for-profit organization for 20 plus years together. This is very typical. Compensation and benefits are virtually always a large share of expenses because it's the staff that really does the work. So this is certainly not surprising. Property, programs, and mission are other major categories in our expense side. I think one of the things that we want to do as a Board of Trustees and as a Finance Committee is make our reporting more meaningful to the congregation so that you understand exactly where the money's going. So we'll be working hard to look at our financial information in a reporting format so you can see both on the revenue and expense side where we are and how things are changing and how we're spending the precious resources that you provide to the church. And finally, let's look forward. This represents what the Stewardship Committee and what the Board of Trustees are looking at for next fiscal year. A goal of $950,000 in contributions. Now that's less, if you look at the earlier slide, than we have had in contributions for the last 5 years. So we're being conservative in this starting point. Now, that doesn't mean we would not like to raise more money, but we want to be conservative as we start out. And you can see the pieces of the pie chart. Again, compensation and benefits, a bit over half. The second largest category is mission. But it really gets back, I think, to how we collect and report our information. Mission is in a whole bunch of different places in our church. And we need to do a far better job of bringing that together so our church really understands where that money goes and what it's for and what it's used for. I think the other thing, and I've talked to Steve about this, mission is not just money. Mission is the time people spend serving those in need. And I think going forward, we need to do a better job of reporting to you the other part, the other resources that go into mission at our church. So the Board of Trustees, the Finance Committee is very excited about where we are today, and we are absolutely committed to working with you to show you where our precious resources come from and where they go and what they're serving.
Thank you, Tom. I want to take a moment and recognize and thank the Stewardship Committee. I'd like each of the members to stand. On our committee are Roger Eliason, Lisa Fuller, Patty Halbron, Sarah Smith-Hirsch, Bill Molman, Paul Schrader, Stephen Thorne, Jan Wolf, Don Ashburn, and Steve Shipstead. So I'd just like to give them a round of applause. Thank you. This committee, it's really my honor and privilege to get to lead this committee. It consists of every single person is just so tremendously committed and dedicated to this church and to our effort to raise money through our stewardship campaign. When we first started talking about our 2022 campaign, we came together last summer and spent quite a while at a couple of different retreats talking through, what our plans should be. And you'll see in a minute, we've got, and you already know, there's a lot of challenges here for the church. And, obviously it's a very special moment in time for us, considering we're going through such transition and we've experienced this pandemic. But as the Stewardship Committee really began talking and thinking about this church, we got more and more excited and more optimistic. And so that is one very important message I want to make sure to leave with you, is that we as a group are just tremendously energized about this campaign and excited about this campaign. And although you'll see there's some challenging numbers, we absolutely think that we can raise the money we need and continue to move our church in the direction that we all want to go. So I'd like to take you through some stewardship trends. This first slide is looking at dollars that have been given annually over the past 5 years. The blue bars indicate dollars committed. The orange bars indicate dollars paid. One of the things that you're not going to hear us say is the term pledge. We've made an effort to step away from using the term pledge, and that's because we've gotten feedback, quite a bit of feedback over the past few years that the term gets confusing and some people don't understand it. So we're talking about commitments and gifts and paid gifts. So that's what you'll hear me saying today. This slide shows that between 2017 and 2019, our dollars committed and paid were pretty steady, right around $1 million, a little bit more, $1,036,000 in 2019. And then in 2020, things begin to change. Now, the 2020 campaign in the blue there, remember our stewardship campaigns normally take place in the fall. And so the commitments were made in the fall of 2019. And our commitments were in line with prior years. But then as the commitments began to be paid, we saw a real difference in the payments compared to prior years as the pandemic kicked in. And then moving into 2021, we had a very significant drop in revenue. We had a $320,000 decrease in our commitments, or 30% reduction. And that was actually $125,000 of that was from 3 donors. So we also, though, had people who stepped up like never before. Even though we had less commitments, you'll see the dollars paid in 2021 actually exceeded the dollars committed. So, and we had a lot of people who came back and increased their pledges, and so we're tremendously grateful to everyone who has given to the church through the stewardship campaign. The next slide shows the number of gifts committed versus paid. So instead of dollars, we're looking at number of gifts. And again, you'll see that in past years, the number of gifts committed were pretty standard, between 264 to, in 2020, 257. But then as we moved into 2020 and 2021, the number of gifts committed and the number of gifts paid, we experienced a significant drop. We had a 24% reduction in gifts committed, or that was 62 commitments. And that was, yes, significant. So now we're going to move into some metrics that show individual giving. And I want to preface this by emphasizing that every gift we receive counts. Every dollar we receive counts, no matter the amount. And we are tremendously grateful for every gift we receive. This slide is showing what we termed as the typical gift. This is the median gift, right? So that's the gift that's at the 50th percentile, meaning that there are half of the gifts we got are above that number and half the gifts we got are below that number. So that number in 2021 actually went up significantly. It was $2,500. And that tells a really positive story, because what that means is that the overall commitment level of our donors in the church increased. The next slide shows giving tiers of the gifts that we received in 2021. And in the first column there on the left, for example, that shows the gifts that we received at the $1,500 level and below. And what this is showing is that out of the total number of gifts that we received, 179 gifts, paid gifts, 70 gifts were in that category. So we had almost 40%, 39% of our total gifts were in that first category. The money that we raised out of those gifts was about $57,000, or 8% of the total. And then if you look on the far right, another example, this is gifts of $10,000 or more. We received 11 gifts in that category, which made up 6% of the total number of gifts. And the gifts in that category raised $272,000, or 36% of our overall total of revenue. So one of the things, in thinking about this and looking at this is because that last category, we're raising, there's a small number of gifts that are raising a lot of money. It's a little risky for us because if we lose one or two of those gifts, it could significantly impact the church, and it could be very difficult to, make up that money. And so as we begin to grow as a church, as we grow our membership, as we see more engagement in the church, what we'd ultimately like to see here is a little bit more of a bell curve. And, we have sort of gifts going like this on a graph like this. And the next slide is showing the gap that we need to fill in order to reach our goal of $950,000. So last year we raised $755,000. As Tom mentioned, our budget goal is $950,000. So that's an additional $195,000 over last year that we need to raise, although it is lower than what we have raised in prior years. And tied into the optimism that I talked about earlier, I want you to know that we have received some early gifts, and they are tremendously strong. And so, we're excited by what we see, and again, we feel fairly confident that, we'll be able to reach this goal if we all work together to support the church. So now I want to just quickly move into ways to give and ensure that you have an understanding about how you can give logistically, I guess, so to speak. We've tried to do everything we can to make it as easy for you to give as possible. So you can give by check, by credit card. We have a great online system if you want to give online. You can give your gift in a lump sum, or you can pay it off throughout the year. And people in our church follow through on all of these different scenarios. One thing to think about is if you might be able to give more if you pay it off throughout the year, then think about that if that's a possibility for you. You can set up, online, you can set up a monthly gift so that it's automatically deducted and given each month. You might want to give your gift here when you come to church as part of the offering and participate that way. So you can do this in whatever way is the most meaningful for you. There's a lot of ways, methods that you can give, vehicles that you can use to give to the church too. So for instance, if you have a retirement account where you have a required minimum distribution, if you use a qualified charitable distribution, a QCD, you can give up to $100,000 tax-free if you're at least 72 years old. Securities is another way you can give. For instance, appreciated stock has tax advantages if that's something that you might want to consider giving. John Chang is here, I believe, and there he is, he's standing up. So he very generously offered to answer questions about how you can give and, for instance, use your retirement accounts and use the best tax advantages you can have. So he'll be here afterwards if you would like to talk with him. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Pat Leisher. She's going to talk about a new way of giving that we have created this year. It's called a transitional gift, and she actually came up with the idea, and it's a fantastic idea. So Pat, can you please come back?
Okay, last time, I promise. About a year and a half ago, as I went on to the Board of Trustees, I was thinking that I really love this church and I want to see it thrive. So what can I do to help? Well, serving on the board and giving my time is one thing. Giving of my treasure is another. I have the church in my will already, but hopefully it'll be another 25 years or so before the church receives that money. What if I give the church some of that money now, when it will really make a difference and I can see the difference it makes? If I'm not generous now, the church may not even be here in 25 years. In my mind, it's something like giving my kids some financial help to get into their first homes. Now is when they need the help, not 25 years from now. I can't do this every year, but I can do it for a year or two, as long as the church doesn't view this as my new financial commitment level. I decided to call this a transitional gift, a special gift while the church is becoming something new and stronger. I did use a direct transfer from my IRA plan to the church, and this qualified, as Donnie mentioned, as part of my required minimum distribution. I think 5 other families have already made transitional gifts as well, so it's an idea that's resonating with some. We certainly don't want and are not asking anyone to jeopardize financial security. If you identify an amount as a transitional gift, it will not be considered your new base giving level. So just give this some thought. No one's going to pressure you in any way on this idea, and this may not be the right time in your life at all. We get that. But if a transitional gift works for you, it will make a difference for PCC because it will help us do the things the mission study team has identified as opportunities. Now we have a stewardship message from Steve.
Before I tell you what's ahead during this, what we've called Stewardship Month, let me just take a moment to really thank the Stewardship Committee for all the work that they have done to make what I think is going to be a very successful stewardship campaign. This is a big committee. It's a fun committee. We've been working since the summer on this campaign, and I just want to thank them. They've worked tirelessly. Especially, it's a big committee, so I'm not going to mention everyone by name, but I do have to say thank you to Donnie Montague, Board of Trustee member who is heading up this committee. She has just done a tremendous job leading this campaign. So thank you, Donnie. So we have named March Stewardship Month, and we will spend every Sunday, the next 4 Sundays, next 3 Sundays after this, talking about stewardship, and specifically about generosity. You know, way back in September, which seems like a long time ago, we started this series called Grace, Gratitude, Generosity, and we had to take a break for Advent, and then, COVID came back. So here we are in March, finishing up this series with generosity. Just to recap it just a little bit, grace is this unconditional, amazing love that God pours out to us, reaches out to us in grace and love. And the natural reaction to that, or response to grace, is gratitude. God fills us up with his love, with his goodness. He gives us all things, and we give thanks. That is gratitude. Remember, I said that gratitude follows grace like thunder follows lightning. And then that brings us to generosity. And generosity just naturally flows from gratitude. Grace and gratitude give us an abundant life. It fills us. And out of this abundance, we become generous people, giving not under compulsion, but freely and with joy. Generous in every way, in love, in speech, in action, in the giving of what God has so graciously given to us. So this is what we will look at this month, and I'm excited about it. We will spend the entire month of March exploring what it means to be generous people and a generous church. And then finally, Stewardship Month will come to an end on March 27th, Sunday, March 27th, with what we're calling Commitment Sunday. And this is a new element for our church, so I want to tell you just a little bit about it. Cards will be given to you as you enter the sanctuary that day. There will also be an online version of this that those of you who will be online can take advantage of. And time will be given during the service to prayerfully consider what you might give to the church in terms of a financial pledge this year. And I hope this is the accumulation really of prayerful consideration all during the month of March. I've said, and I will say this month, that I love preaching about stewardship because I don't think it's just about money. It's about our spiritual lives. It's about our hearts. And so I pray that this won't just be a financial decision, but very much a decision that you come before God and talk about. So then during the service, there will be a time to bring those cards forward, to place them in baskets at the front of the sanctuary. Now this is going to be really different for us, but I have to tell you, I've done this a number of times in my ministry, every year actually. It is one of my favorite times in the life of the church because it's a moment when we really tangibly and very concretely have an opportunity to express our love to God, express our gratitude to God, but also to very much express our commitment to this body of believers here at Piedmont Community Church. It's a very moving service for me as a pastor, and I hope it will be for you too. After that service, we're going to have a celebration, and in fact, I hope the whole day is a celebration, and we will have a meal to share with each other in the courtyard and in Fellowship Hall or in Guild Hall. So that's what it's going to look like. I encourage you to attend every Sunday to hear about this very important topic. And my prayer is that this whole month will be filled with celebration and with joy for what God has done and is going to do in the life of our church.
Really, as a committee, wanted to have a campaign where we had a beginning and an end. And that's very different from my experience of our stewardship campaign in the past. And it's going to be a time for us all to have the wonderful opportunity to hear from Steve and think about, and Don, and think about giving, think about generosity, and contemplate the blessings in our life and how we want to contribute back to our church as a result. So now we're going to take a few minutes to give you the opportunity to ask questions, and Tom and Pat and myself are all here to answer any questions you may have. We got a microphone. It's on the other side. Yeah, it did. Over on the left, Steve.
Wrapping up that Tom showed the amount that was drawn to make up on the blue line.
Yes.
How did that move from the endowment, and did you ever exceed the cap of the endowment?
Tom, do you want to repeat the question?
The question from them was on the second slide showing the capital transfer. How much was from the endowment fund, and did we exceed the 5% maximum we can take from the endowment fund? And we did not. I'd have to look to see how much came from the endowment fund versus the special projects fund. But as you saw from that exhibit, every year, and this apparently has gone back quite a ways, but every year we're drawing money out of endowment and special projects to fund the operations of the church. One thing I didn't mention in the COVID year is we received about $300,000 in PPP loans and employee retention tax credits. So if we add that amount, which didn't come from church members, plus the capital transfer, that was about $370,000 that went to help fund this church, or the gap would be much, much bigger than we saw. But we're well within, Manuel, the restrictions on the endowment transfer. But as I said, not a good strategy when you're continually drawing from your savings to support your operations on an annual basis.
Actually, if you have a question, could you step forward? Because the folks online, that way, are not able to hear your question. And if you could just speak into the microphone.
This is not a planted question. I hope.
What are the special project funds?
Is Kathy Keller here still, or Bill? Do you? Bill's on the finance committee. Oh, thank you, Kathy.
Kathy, could you step up and answer the question so we can all hear your answer? Down. Come on down.
I'm not really prepared for this, but special projects would be like, we have Michael Barber, who's working here on, that was a special project to have someone like him. We also have a fund that's called deferred maintenance or capital fund, and that also comes into play at his slide, and it wasn't mentioned, but that would be like maintenance on the manse, maintenance on the church that we don't anticipate, so we do draw on this fund as well.
Any other questions on the financial side? Before, I think there's one in the back.
Come on down, Will.
Now I recognize you, Will, with your mask off.
Some of this is probably obvious to everybody but me, but the last number of times that we've gone through this, I'm still confused. So when we're talking in this abbreviated dates, we're in the 2021 budget right now, right?
So our fiscal year goes from July 1st to June 30th. So we're in the 2021 budget right now.
Okay.
21-22 fiscal year.
So that means we're currently in the 21 budget.
21-22 fiscal year budget. That last, on the exhibits, we report 6 months of the 21-22 fiscal year. That's right. The data were available through the end of December, Will.
Okay. So what we're doing now is for the 22-23 budget.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we're planning for.
Okay. Second thing I've always been confused about, and I know this stuff is confusing. My home finances are confusing. So this is but if this could be explained in the next weeks, I would be great. I don't know what the budget is. We're trying to raise $1 million here, but our budget, is it 2 million? Is it 1.5? It's not 1.
No.
So I don't understand that discrepancy.
That's, I think, an important point, because what we report here are the financial results. But what we're saying here, well, and this is going to go forward well in the planning process with the Board of Trustees. What's the budget look like? And we can't really specify that until we focus on goals, objectives, in that zero-based budgeting analysis. So we don't know yet what the 22-23 budget will be.
Correct, but why does the pie chart only have $1 million?
That's just the giving campaign. Okay?
Yeah, but we need more than $1 million. We need
True.
2 million or whatever it is. So I don't understand that.
It's an example so that you know when you're giving your financial commitment, you understand what it's funding. That's what that is demonstrating. It's not designed to be a budget, but it's to show that all of the gifts that come through the stewardship campaign are contributed to the church in those ways that you see on the pie chart.
But Will, if you look at Pardon me? Yeah, if you look at the detailed exhibits on revenue sources and expense components, that's where you start to see where the revenue comes from: facilities, Mexico mission, grants. Those are all components beyond the pledge campaign, if you will, that go into the budget.
But are they self-funding or something? I mean,
Some are self-funded.
There are other sources of revenue that are not contributions from members.
Like 2 preschools.
Yeah, preschools, renting facilities for weddings and the like. There are grants people give to the church. Mexico generates revenue, Mexico mission trip.
yeah, I understand.
Preschool.
Yeah.
So,
But you ask a good question, Will, and maybe since I just joined the Board of Trustees this past summer, what was the budget for the current fiscal year that we're in? What budget did we adopt for this current fiscal year? The total budget. Because that's what you're getting at, Will, is how does contributions fit into the total budget?
yeah.
About $2 million. Thank you, Pat.
Okay, so I like I said before, this stuff is complicated, but if that could be clarified over the next.
And you will find it in the annual report. I understand. The budget is the budget for this year. In the last annual report, you'll see the current budget.
But, Will, you raise a good point, because I think in our financial reporting in the future,
Yeah.
we need to have what the budget adopted was, and then what actually we achieved both by revenue and expense. So we know how that related to the budget that the Board of Trustees adopted for the next fiscal year. And we don't show that on that exhibit, and that's a good example.
And then my third question, I'm sorry to hog the floor so much, but when we have, what important to a lot of us is the mission giving. And in the pie chart, it has 15%. And I understand also this is complex because I've been involved with it. And what do we count for mission? There's a lot of.
That's, as I said earlier, Will, we have mission in all parts of our church.
Exactly.
And we have, if you look at the expense category of programs, that's a very broad category. And to be honest, I'm not sure at this point all the things that go into that reporting category. So one of the things we need to do is, particularly for mission, because that is a major source of what we do, to really do a better job of finding out what we actually spend for mission across all those different things, first of all. And then secondly, how much time our church spends in mission programs, because that's part and parcel to mission. Yeah. And that's what I said about going forward, is doing a much better job of organizing and reporting that data to the church,
right.
So that we know.
I like what you said about the non-monetary mission too, because that's a huge thing.
Absolutely.
Because of course, as we all know, the advantage to mission is both to the recipients and the givers.
That's right.
And so those are my 3 questions. I'll get off now.
Well, they're good, but thank you, Will. Any other questions on the finances?
And any other general questions? All right. Well, we
Sonny, you had a question, right? You want to come up to ask your question?
My name is Sonny. I'm interested in trying to predict areas of significant potential loss in times when things are fairly good. I was wondering,
You gotta speak up. Yeah, it's on.
I'm interested in areas of potential loss, sometimes devastating loss. One, the COVID's not finished with us yet. We don't know what effect that's going to have, if it gets worse or lasts longer or mutates. And another thing is earthquakes, because we've suffered through almost biblical disasters and seen them up close between earthquakes and fires. And I was wondering, earthquake-wise, how protected are we here if something really devastated happened to our building and facilities? And what part of the budget handles that?
Thank you for the question. I don't know that we're prepared today to get into the detail that might require answering that question in terms of the plans. I am not personally familiar with our plans. I would expect that our church has quite detailed plans around earthquake, and I know there's been work on retrofitting our campus and the building and grounds and all of that. So we can certainly put you in touch with the right people who can answer those questions. All right, well, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here. We're grateful for your time and attention. And as you know, over the next few weeks here in March, I hope you'll give a serious and prayerful consideration to your contribution to PCC this year. And I hope that you're feeling now the optimism and the excitement that those of us who have been working on the Stewardship Committee are feeling, and that together we're going to grow in grace and grow in gratitude and grow in generosity. I wrote down one of the things that Don said in his sermon today. Give what you can now I can't read my writing. Give what you can to support what you treasure. Isn't that great? Give what you can to support what you treasure. So I think if we maybe take that away today, that it would be great. So we've got tacos outside, and where are tacos? It'll be in the tacos will be right outside in the courtyard. You can't miss it. And Don, could you please close us in prayer?
Wonderful job, Stewardship Committee. Thank you so much. And now I feel really tall, incredibly tall here. So I'm actually going to step off of this platform. And let's pray. God bless us. Bless our hearts, our minds, to give what we can in service of your people here in this congregation and through this congregation to the world. Bless this campaign that we're on to raise money, but also raise money for a purpose, to be the people you've called us to be and you've gifted us to be. Be with us as we move forward now, and bless the food we're about to eat as well. For we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.